Okay, perfect, okay. Good morning everyone, and thanks to the IEN for inviting me along to speak here today. So both Anya and Pádraig have starkly set the scene of the emergency that we're facing at both a global and a national level. So we're in no doubt as to the challenge ahead of us. As Michael said, I work as Heritage Officer in Waterford City and County Council, so I'm based in the planning section. So I suppose the Heritage Officer role is quite broad, but largely it's project implementation of heritage and biodiversity projects. Because I'm in planning, I would also have input to natural heritage issues on a policy basis, on a day-to-day development management basis, and sometimes enforcement as well. So I suppose after setting the scene at a global and national level, I suppose I want to bring your attention now down to the local level, because you as local authority members and discuss, what the role, what contribution you can bring through being members of the local authority and also as being members of strategic policy committees, which obviously many of you are here today. So just kind of a broad background, as I said, because I work in sort of the heritage biodiversity area, just to give you a flavour of the professional network around the country. So out of 31 local authorities, there are 27 heritage officers. The Heritage Officer Programme is supported by the Heritage Council, has been there for 20 years next year, or this year actually. So it's well established, and hopefully a lot of you are familiar with the Heritage Officers in your local authority. There aren't any Heritage Officers in Wexford or Carlow, and I think they could be filled already, but there are vacancies in Fingal and Dún Laoghaire, Rathdown. So I said our remit is quite broad, and we cover heritage and biodiversity, but some local authorities are fortunate to also have biodiversity officers, and they are, and I hope this is correct, Dublin City, Dún Laoghaire, Fingal, Kerry, Wexford and Galway. So the key part of our role is we prepare 5-year heritage plans under the guidance of Heritage Fora, so possibly some of you are involved in your local heritage forum, where you've input to, again, heritage policy and heritage projects. Again, on a straw poll, there's about 25 to 29 active heritage fora around the country, and they would meet 4 times a year under the guidance of the Heritage Officer. So each heritage officer, heritage forum is charged with preparing a heritage plan, and also there are also separate biodiversity plans. So I suppose back in 2008, the department strongly advocated that local authorities prepare local biodiversity plans. There was enter. Yeah. So there was a specific fund. Top screen. There was a specific fund set aside for that until 2010, and then with the recession that was ceased. So when heritage plans came up for review, sometimes they incorporated natural heritage actions. So some heritage plans cover both heritage and biodiversity, and some local authorities have separate heritage plans and biodiversity plans. Also, a lot of local authorities have energy agencies, and just last September, all the local authorities adopted climate change adaptation strategies, and all those documents have extensive objectives in them for biodiversity. Okay, so just a quick slide on, I suppose, said that the role involves a lot of project management on heritage and natural heritage and biodiversity. So obviously we need funding to manage those projects, so there's a wide range of funding sources. Annually we would apply to the Heritage Council for funding for the heritage plan projects, so that's in the region of about 22 to 25,000. It used to be a lot more before the recession, but it's remained static. Also, thankfully the department have re-established a fund for biodiversity plan projects, so that's in the region of 14 to 17,000 annually. And then where you want to do larger scale projects, you look to sources like Interreg. In Waterford, we've been involved in a project with Ireland and Wales, which was fantastic. Obviously with Brexit, that funding source is going to cease. Leader are a very relevant source of funding at the moment. They're specifically targeting biodiversity training, and a lot of community groups are availing of that. For coastal communities, there's FLAG, sort of the leader funding for coastal areas. And then there's other sources like Creative Ireland, and even though you think, okay, Creative Ireland is to do with culture, culture includes heritage, natural heritage, and again in Waterford, we've availed of funding there to support videos on implementation of the pollinator plan for the National Biodiversity Data Centre, so advice to tidy towns groups, to farmers, to local communities. Other sources under the Water and Communities Fund, Town and Village Renewal, Otter Recreation, and the Community Foundation Ireland. So yeah, at the moment it's a really good time for applying for funding. A key part of our role is awareness raising. So in any given calendar year, you have significant events like World Wetlands Day on February the 2nd, Biodiversity Week in mid-May, and Heritage Week. And there are other events as well. And some of you, I'm sure, have been to those events. And again, great opportunities to promote positivity about biodiversity, to promote your local area, and get people involved, which is the key thing. In terms of the role of local authorities, I think there's three key areas that it can be broken down to. So policy. So again, as elected members, you have the reserve function of adopting the county development plan, the statutory plans. Local economic and community plan, probably involved last September in adopting the climate change adaptation plan, and then other plans like heritage plan and biodiversity plans, and then obviously policy that comes to you for discussion and proposal under the strategic policy committees, and then when that's agreed, I suppose it's taken forward to the plenary committees. And obviously all these plans lead to projects, and they're developed in the framework of those plans. And then another, I suppose, essential area for local authorities to impact on biodiversity is their work practices. So are their work practices going to be carried out to best practice? Are they incorporating biodiversity and climate-proof measures? And I'll give examples of those in a few minutes. In terms of policy, now that I think all the regional and economic spatial strategies have been adopted, local authorities are now preparing to review their city and county development plans. Where we will be embarking on that in Waterford in Q1, probably next February, March. And I suppose, obviously, the first thing to do is review the national legislative framework and policy framework, because that will input into your county plan. So, for example, just thinking in the last few years since we last reviewed the Waterford County Development Plan, we've had the National Landscape Strategy, we've had the third National Biodiversity Plan, we've had the second round of the River Basin Management Plans, we've had climate change, adaptation strategies and policy documents, across party consensus for actions in 2019. So planning authorities all around the country are thinking, okay, how do we apply the policies in those national documents, and how do we bring them down to the local level? So, for example, landscape biodiversity, we can look at green infrastructure strategies. For the Water Framework Directive, we can include specific objectives to support, there will be guidelines from the Department next year on planning water quality, and measures for restoration. So where we have water bodies that are identified as moderate status that need to be brought back up to good, and hopefully in time high status, to specifically list those and list the blue dot catchments on the maps in the development plans. And maybe looking at the smaller stepping stones between the SSCs and SPAs and NHAs, like small wetland sites, excuse me, and include those as local biodiversity sites in the development plan. In Waterford, we've been working on a habitat map for the past 10 years. So targeting habitat mapping projects on the lesser known sites. So these are the sites that are not like of national or European importance, but are very important as ecological corridors linking those designated sites. And we particularly concentrate on wetlands because we recognise that they are under pressure from agriculture intensification, from infill and other pressures. So we, in the last county development plan, we identified 21 wetlands of local biodiversity value. They are now protected. The legislation has since changed from 2011 in that it's no longer exempt to infill wetlands that are larger than 100 metres squared. But apart from that, the landowners went through the notification process. They can't say that they didn't know that they had a wetland of local biodiversity interest on their land. In 2015, we carried out a further survey, so we have 35 sites ready to go in the new development plan. And that's just, we did an internal review and just, I suppose, backing up our instinct that, wetlands are under threat and there's ongoing loss. And I suppose, just a quick mention was the context for wetland drainage is obviously a lot of times in agriculture intensification, and hopefully the new CAP scheme will address that. And in this policy document that came out during the year, they're saying that national review of land use should include adaptation co-benefits such as wetlands to mitigate flooding risk in river catchment, and that the CAP hopefully will see an increase in environmental payments around 40%, specifically directed at climate environmental measures. And that's what's needed, because I suppose farmers will follow the money. So if there's money available for eligible land for single farm payment, but if also equally if there's money for wildlife and habitat retention, they will adapt to that. So that's what's needed, is financial incentives. I mentioned green infrastructure strategy. So a lot of local authorities are I suppose commissioning these as part to inform the county development plan, and it is what it suggests. If you take our hedgerows or tree lines, they obviously have value for flood attenuation, for carbon sinks, and they perform. If we took out all the hedgerows and all the wetlands, the amount of money we would have to spend on hard infrastructure, but we don't need to, because we have these natural features. So green infrastructure strategies, what they do is they identify the resource, so habitat mapping, they identify the ecological connectivity, the areas of value for biodiversity and carbon capture, and wetland, and also looking at SOD, so sustainable drainage, because what's happening is, I suppose, a lot is that we're hard surfacing a lot of areas, and it's preventing groundwater recharge and preventing and also leading to flooding, because the sheet wash coming off the land, higher volume in the rivers. So we need to look at floodplain management in that. I'm going to skip through a few of these. I have a few examples of projects that we're working on in Waterford. Freshwater pearl mussel is a species that is under decline in all of Ireland. There's 27 SSCs designated for it. We have 3 in Waterford, and in order to help the pearl mussel, we've set up an assisted breeding programme in Kilmeaden, whereby under licence we transferred 10 mussels from the river, and they're reproducing, and it's working quite well. So we're going to extend that next year. We got funding from Interreg to carry out an Otter survey involving citizen science, and people just love getting involved and getting hands-on experience. I mentioned work practice. So again, if your local authority signed up to pollination framework, make sure that the work on the ground matches what you signed up to the policy, that the contractors are reducing or eliminating pesticides, or cutting the hedges at the right time of year. The big problem, I suppose, in any organisation is one section not knowing what the other is doing. We had the South Dublin County Council wetland case where one section was doing a wildlife survey, another section was infilling it. So designing in biodiversity considerations and early planning at the start. Just yesterday, the day before, I was out with our engineers, and this is going to be an increasingly common occurrence in the future, where the volume of river was so much that it caused loss of a 30-metre section of wall. And so obviously the road was closed, and they want to repair it as quick as possible. But downstream of that bridge, there are lovely salmon redds, so timing of work is essential. So if we went in straight away and took out all that stuff, they would be still going down the river and causing damage to the salmon gravel beds. So talking to the fisheries, talking to the National Parks and Wildlife Service, and making sure that you do damage limitation, you repair the road, leave the material into the river until the summer, when you won't be damaging the fish. And again, this is going to be a common occurrence, because there's so much volume of debris coming down the rivers because of drainage of wetlands. There's no chance to slow down the material. So again, there's pressure to clean this up, but as soon as we take out the sediment, it's going to refill. So I'll just quickly go through these. So there's some opportunities, collaborating with the existing groups on the ground. So tiny towns do fantastic work. They're getting involved in the pollinator awards, they're getting involved in SWIFT projects. Leader running biodiversity training, the river basin management plan teams, Lawpro are doing fantastic work on the ground, and out of their work there are emerging river trusts around the country, like the River Nore, the Coombo Corrib Partnership and Dungarvan Harbour Partnership. So to support existing initiatives, supporting things like the Farming and Nature Awards. So again, I just advocate in your role as local authority members, to support stronger protection for local biodiversity in the development plan. To advocate for robust and comprehensive green infrastructure strategies, advocate for more robust policies on SODs and development plans, and support habitat mapping on a catchment basis. And obviously we'll discuss these at the tables again in your role in your local authority, how you can respond to the emergencies. Thanks very much.